Welcome back to Morning at NTV, and the topic today is on sexual harassment, sexual abuse, not just for, the females, but also the males, not just for the grown-ups, but also for the children. What do we do? How can we forge forward and get solutions? What can be done on a practical scale to ensure that the numbers actually go down? And in studio, I have CEO for FIDA, Madam Irene Ovonji. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Sexual harassment and sexual abuse is actually on the rise, and not just in the formal sector, but in the informal sector, and it cuts across male, female, adults, children. What is sexual harassment and sexual abuse? Because I know these are two totally different things.
Yes. Yeah, well, morning viewers, I think this is a very important topic, and it's unfortunate that it is on the rise, at least both here and globally. Sexual harassment really relates to unwanted sexual advances. It might be direct, it might be implicit. So direct might be somebody coming up to you, and saying, making a suggestive statement, that I think we should have a sexual relationship. And this is a person who does not have a personal relationship, an intimate relationship with the person who they are making the advances to.
Correct.
It might also be gestures or pictures, that statements, general statements, maybe not direct to the person, but done in a way that the focus of the attention is quite clear, that is directed to them. In some cases, it's really also about creating a certain environment at the workplace. So you may have people, it tends to be men, not only men, but it tends to be men, and there are probably reasons for that, making it, suggestions and jokes and gestures that make the whole environment sexualized.
Yes.
So it just introduces into the work environment something that is entirely inappropriate. It's unwelcome, so there is no basis or in the relationship that gives it, but also it's about power. And probably that's why it tends to be men, although not exclusively men, because it's often it's unlikely that a subordinate will make that kind of suggestion to somebody who is their superior.
Correct.
And so in many workplaces and also in society, the trend is that men have more power
over the women. And how about sexual abuse?
Well, sexual abuse often will go further. So you'll have, and there's a whole range of actions which constitute sexual abuse and which legally are looked at as sexual offenses. They may go up from things like rape and defilement and other actions that don't reach that level but are sexual in nature.
Correct.
It may be somebody touching a person, maybe inserting their hand or an object into the person, which sometimes will also be seen as rape or defilement, depending on what exactly happens. But basically it's explicit. Or rather, it's explicit or implicit, and it's sexual in nature. That's the issue.
It's sexual in nature.
It's sexual in nature, and it's unwanted attention.
On ground, I'm sure you've seen in the informal sector, Andrew Chamagero is in Owino, in the hearts and deepest parts of Owino, where women actually do their catering and they cook food, to supply to other people still within the market. But the issue is, of all the workers in the market in Owino, these caterers, these waiters are the ones that are actually sexually harassed at a higher scale compared to other people. Would you say it's a thing of, them not being aware of their rights and feeling like, okay, this guy harassed me, but I don't have a voice. I'm afraid that maybe he might turn and beat me. What is it?
Well, as I said, it's really about power. And connected to gender quite often. So somebody looking at a person, often of another gender, and feeling that they have power over that person. They can influence what happens to that person. They can affect, and in the workplace, it's pretty much connected as well to the abuser, the sexual harasser, connecting their actions to to the work outcomes of the victim or the survivor. So giving a person the sense that if they don't cooperate, it will affect their work. Either they will not get a job, or they will not get a promotion, or the workplace will become very unpleasant. So it may be that in that space, with that category of workers, first of all, they're probably largely women, who are doing the catering.
Correct.
Because we also tend to have in our workplaces, there's a tendency to segregate work by gender.
Yes.
So certain work is often seen as women's work. So they're probably all women, and so this also then, and it may well be that their supervisors are male. So already that kind of dynamic around gender is being introduced into that space.
Yes.
And so all the kind of biases and assumptions that we find in our society around gender and how women and men should relate begin to play out. Possibly if among the supervisors they are females, you may find a different dynamic at play. And if among the workers catering, there are some males, again, it may start to shift the dynamics. So those could be some of the issues.
Yes.
But beyond that, there's a need for employers to introduce measures that prevent this.
Okay, the formal sector is pretty much catered for, because when you get a job, there's this, contract that you have to sign, and many of them, not all though, have that section, of that highlights in case it happens, this is what you do. But in the informal sector, pretty much it's a gamble, it's not there. Then what solutions can you give the workers that are in the informal sector that see this happening on a day-to-day basis, but they feel like they can't do anything about it? Can they report, or before it happens, how then can they avoid it? So just to see the numbers going down.
Yes, and all of that is a challenge. So the issues around just awareness, for people to know that it's not right, it's not appropriate. And I was watching the show, and some of these things start right from the home.
Correct.
So if somebody right in their home or in their school has experienced something like that, you may find by the time she or he gets to the workplace, in their mind it's normalized, or it's something they just have to accept.
Yes.
The way we are as human beings, you'll find that even a person is not aware of the law and the rights, there will be some discomfort that they feel. Like they don't have to be taught the discomfort, because it just comes naturally that this is not appropriate. So the first thing I would say to everyone is just also to listen to yourself.
Okay.
If you're in your mind, your emotions are already triggering something that's negative, that tells you that what's going on is probably not right.
Yes.
But beyond that, it's important for information to be provided. So in informal spaces, for the employers, it's important for them to know that even in that informal space, this is a place of employment.
Yes.
And the rules are not the same as the rules you'd have between friends or between people who are partners, intimate partners. And so they can connect to organizations like FIDA and other organizations, mainly women, that work on these sorts of issues, to provide information. And we are available to provide that information, to come and talk especially to the supervisors and the people in charge of other people, so that in their minds they are clear about this. We've had this sort of relationship, for example, with women in the flower sector, which is also informal labor and low cadre workers.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that groups like that are reached by these services. At the end of the day, though, it is also a state responsibility above all.
Correct.
And so what I would urge is that anyone coming from a law enforcement agency, from government, who is watching this program, who's listening to what you are airing, takes this as an area that they need to follow through. There must be police posts in that area. How can they work together with the management of the markets?
But the issue is, okay, in the informal sector, for them that are strong enough to step up and report these instances, they go to the police stations, and they're actually made fun of.
Yeah, that is true. So it means that it's not only about the individual police officer, but the police as an institution. As an institution. Just in the same way as in the workplace, it's good for an individual worker to find information, but the institution, the management, the administration also has a responsibility to do something. So it's not just the individual, because that really would be, we're saying it's up to you to make sure that you're not victimized, which is not the case. It's up to the employer as well to create an environment and to send a strong signal. That sexual harassment is not acceptable.
Correct.
If it's done, there will be punishment for it. There will be sanctions. A person will be disciplined. A person may be fired for doing that. There have been examples in the media recently about it happening at Makerere University, for example. I sit on the council of Makerere University. I'm the vice chair. And we've been having discussions about that issue as well.
Okay.
That as the council, we and as the management, top management of the university, we have a responsibility to make sure that the structures, which in the case of Makerere exist for reporting, are functional. We have to ensure that the resources are provided to those structures to function, because the structures need to be at different levels, at department level, at college level, so that a person who is victimized, and it may be a student, it may be staff, has somewhere they can go to near, you know. So that is the kind of intervention that management and leadership in an institution need to start making. We also are having a discussion about having some weeks of talks about this issue, because it starts with awareness.
Awareness and empowerment.
Yes, awareness and empowerment, those two things. So this is similar. Now, Makerere is a large place, but similarly, even in smaller establishments, the management needs to start taking those steps. Whether it's formal or informal is not, it doesn't matter. And I would also want to take it further beyond marketplaces and so on, which are really critical, because a lot of women, low-cadre workers are in those places. I'd want to take it further and say even in homes, because some of these cases happen in homes.
Yes.
It's important that the heads of the homes, if it's a wife, and often it's women who are managing domestic workers, right? That they also have those conversations in the homes. They have the conversation with their partners, you know, and with any men who are in that home. And
what route does these conversations take? For example, if you get to know that your spouse is actually abusing the nanny or the maid at home, how do you go about it as a woman?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and we've had cases like that we've received at our offices. It's very difficult because for the woman, or whose partner is doing that, there's already the betrayal that's happening in the relationship. Sometimes you'll find that they'll start questioning, and unfortunately, sometimes they'll start blaming the victim and thinking that, you know, maybe she made advances and things like that. I think it's important even before it happens to start having those kind of conversations.
How?
You talk about it, you know, just have the discussion. You know, when my children were younger, my children are now in their 20s. When they were younger, I used to get together with family friends, 2 or 3 friends, and relatives, and bring our children together. And we would get one of us who works in those, she used to work at Straight Talk, to come and talk to them. And these kids were between 7 and 14, to put them together and have the discussions, you know, about sexuality, have the discussion about what is inappropriate. So I remember talking to them and saying, when my children are very young, like 5 years, I say, you know, nobody should touch you inappropriately, and explain to them what inappropriate means. So I'd say, for example, if for the girl, you know, when you wear your swimming costume, no one should touch you anywhere the swimming costume ends, you know, and a person who is not bathing you shouldn't even do that. There's no reason for it, so that the kids start getting aware.
Correct.
And they also start listening to themselves, because as I said at the beginning, everybody has got that in them. You know, you'll have something, a sensation that tells you this isn't right. But because in this society, often we're not comfortable talking about these issues, and then we also, as a country, we have a culture which I would say is very hierarchical. You know, when you talk to children who have grown up in other, especially out of Africa, they have a very strong sense of self and the right to speak up. But in our society,
you have to keep quiet.
You have to keep quiet.
Keep it to yourself.
Yes, if it's an
wrong,
adult,
don't say it.
Exactly. You know, if it's your uncle, if it's your aunt, you're not supposed to talk back. There's a place for respect. But this is not about respect. This is about self-preservation. And so as a parent, as a manager, as a boss, we need to appreciate the harm that these kind of actions cause. And therefore, balancing between the respect that you want a subordinate or a child to have and the self-preservation that everybody needs, you know, to survive and to thrive.
We have Asia on standby. Asia is the CEO for PINA. Okay, not a problem. I hear she's not ready, so we'll get back to you, Asia, when you're ready. There's this issue where then how do we empower not just the children? Because, for example, these people who are in downtown working as caterers, they're already off that age of being children to be empowered at that stage. Then what conversations do we need to have? I think as FIDA, as organizations that, you know, have that.
And as employers.
Exactly, and as employers. How then do we go about it? How do we start having these conversations? And how do we make sure that these conversations are actually effective? Because like you said, here in our country, in Uganda, we have that hierarchy kind of mindset that if a male does something to you, you don't have to speak out. How do we have these conversations with ladies who are already grown-ups in the informal sector that feel, okay, if I'm defiled, if I'm harassed, it's okay, I need to just, you know, like keep in silence and not talk about it? How then can we systematically put this, you know, conversations in a way that we are sure that they're effective?
Okay, I'll answer that two ways. One is in terms of the content.
Correct.
And then the other is around therefore how do we go about it. So in terms of the content, it's first about, because this is about respect and the lack of it, sexual harassment. So, and then also about disempowerment, right? You take away somebody's power. So for a person who is a potential victim, it's issues around life skills, so the content should include content about self-respect and not just self-awareness, but it's really about self-respect regardless of who you are, regardless of, you know, whether you're young, adult, rich, poor, you're a human being.
Correct.
And you deserve to be respected for that reason alone. You're a worker, you came here to work.
Yes.
So that's one. So the other area is also around rights. So rights awareness, that you came here to work. You didn't come here to service the boss, you know, sexually.
Yes.
So the separation, the boundaries, based on what your rights are and where your rights start and end, and the right of your co-worker or your boss starts and end.
Correct.
So that kind of awareness is about legal awareness and rights awareness. That's another area.
And when we have the conversation about awareness, where then can they come to make sure they report these cases and these cases are actually taken up? Exactly.
So about process, that's now looking at it in terms of process.
Yes.
So to know which of the organizations, here we will likely talk about civil society organizations.
Yes.
For the most part, they tend to be women's organizations.
Correct.
It would be great if other broader human rights organizations took on this kind of work, but for the most part, for now, you find it's largely women NGOs.
Yes.
So knowing that that's where they are, which are those women organizations, that kind of information, where are they located? How can you access them? We've tried to develop an app at FIDA. Okay. Not everybody can access that, right? A legal aid app that you can go on, or you can go online, and I can send you that information, the specific information. I didn't come with it. You can go online and look for that information, but not everybody's going to have that.
Correct.
So even knowing the physical locations where one can get that, but also knowing at your workplace itself, is there a structure for this? Because many times you'll find the workers don't even have the time to go out of the workplace to look for the solution. So in the workplace, is there a structure?
Correct.
And this is where the role of the management comes in, to set up maybe a person who receives complaints of this nature.
Yes.
And you just say to everybody, if something goes wrong, and it should be somebody who's relatively senior, preferably female.
Yes.
If something goes wrong, this is the person you go to. And then that person needs to know the procedures that they follow. Who do they refer the matter to?
Yes.
Yes. So that kind of information is what we need.
Correct.
Yes. But the other thing I would also urge is because disempowering people thrives on silence, it also thrives on people feeling isolated.
Yes, and fear.
Yes, fear. You know, and isolation increases the fear.
Yes.
I'm going to deal with this on my own. I'm going to lose my job. That sort of thing. I'm not going to have somewhere to cook and make some money to take home.
Yes.
So creating space in an organization for women to network, women to talk to each other, even if it's to say when at lunchtime you can all sit together, you can have this conversation.
Yes.
So it begins to create that bond between people, and I will know if I see my friend or my colleague isn't behaving normally.
And know there's something happening.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We have Asia on standby. Asia, if you can hear me. Chamagero?
Hi. We have Asia here.
Chamagero, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You have Asia with you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Asia is the CEO of PINA, People in Need Agency, and on the flip side, this is actually happening to children as well. Asia, if you can tell us, what are your experiences on ground when you get to interact with these children who have been sexually defiled? What do you have to tell us about that?
Asia, the question is, what is the feedback on ground? What is the situation like on ground for now?
In terms of what?
In terms of the sexual harassment, the sexual assault, you're like in real battle with these kind of guys.
Yes. The issue is sexual violence or sexual abuse is real. I'll be referring more to Kalangala fishing communities.
Yes.
In Kalangala, there are several myths and beliefs that surround sexual violence, where most fishermen believe that when you sleep with a young girl, before fishing, you're likely to get more fish. Others believe that the reason why they defile young girls is because they've been bewitched to defile young girls, while others associate it with the fact that women are fewer than men. So because women are fewer, they have to encroach on the young girls, which is wrong. And this is why I, as Asia, plus other people that are dedicated to make a difference in the lives of girls, are spearheading a campaign to end sexual violence among girls. You know, we cannot continue looking on when girls are defiling by their own parents, when girls are trafficked for cheap labor and sexual exploitation. I work with children living with HIV, and I've worked with children for over 10 years. But as I'm working, I always meet these girls. I counsel them to take their medications. Others share with me the challenges they face in a bid to cope with HIV, as well as coping with the trauma associated with being sexually abused at such a very tender age. And beyond that, these girls are also vulnerable to sexual abuse, drug use, alcohol, and forced prostitution.
Correct.
So,
Chamagero?
I don't think we can afford to still look on. Girls are being abused by their own people that would have protected them. Societies that are supposed to protect girls are the ones that are protecting defilers.
I hear you, Chamagero.
She says that the would-be protectors have become the very, phrases. And she says, of course, she's in the real battle. She's in the real field of fighting against sexual assault, and her stories of the girls she loves.
Thank you so much, Chamagero. Irene, we've heard of Asia's report, and actually the statistics are appalling. Over 95,000 children are defiled annually.
That's a problem.
Annually, 95. And it's children. And the issue that is coming out is it's not just strangers, but parents.
Yeah.
What can be done? Is it that as parents we are failing at our roles in parenting?
Yeah, that's part of it. Part of it is the parents. Part of it is the change in social attitudes, in values, the lack of sense of community. In the past, when I was growing up, 40, 50 years ago,
yes,
if a child was lost, a stranger would make sure that child gets to their home.
Back home, yeah.
Yes, gets back home. If a child was running out of school, when they should be in school, the stranger would follow and say, "Why are you out? Go back to school." So that stranger will take the child and do something, abuse the child. So our values have changed, and it's not right. So when you have a shift in social norms, you need social institutions to come in very strongly, from the religious, institutions to the community ones. They may be cultural ones and so on. They need to come in much more strongly.
Correct.
But also you need the state when it is this widespread. So it has to happen at different levels. And the social institutions, of course, include the family, so the parents. Spending more time talking to children about these things. When when you're taking them to school or when you're at home working with them, just having the conversation all the time.
So spending more time with them and being intentional about having conversations with them.
Having conversations and trying to counteract some of the negative influences.
Yes.
there are very positive influences you can get from media like this show.
Correct.
But there are also negative influences, including on social media. So explaining some of those things, and if your kids have access to social media, checking even TV, what are they watching?
And what's the correct age to start having these conversations with our children?
I think from when the child can talk. The way
are you serious? At 2 years?
I'm very serious. It's what you say will depend on how old the child is.
Correct.
It will not be the same thing.
Yes.
But you start having that kind of conversation and building trust and building the connection, so the child feels they can come to you with anything.
Okay, you as FIDA, I'm sure you're at the forefront of fighting for these people who have undergone this. I know you do that as well.
Yeah.
But the complaint is coming through that, you know, of X amount of cases that have been reported, only a very small percentage has actually gone through successfully, and the perpetrators brought to book. What is happening in our systems?
Breakdown, you know, just like in many other, you know, we've seen it in healthcare, we've seen it in you know, medical and so on. Education, breakdown of system, public systems are really are stressed right now. Not enough money being put into them. In this case, we're talking about the justice system. We're talking about law enforcement agencies. Not enough money going into them, into those units that deal with the public, that deal with the community. So, for example, in the police, the directorate that deals with family and child protection, more resources being put into there. The community policing, more money going into that, rather than going into the more political work that you've seen them involved in. The other point I want to make, and this is why it's both a societal but it's also a state issue, governments, is that some of these things come from policy. There's a study that's been done. I was reading a chapter about it. It's looking at, it's called the neoliberal moral economy. So we're in a system at a policy level, economically, which is highly neoliberal. You know, it's opened up, liberalized, privatized. Everything's privatized. And so we've seen the death of the public, as I term it. Where they talk about public health care, we talk about public education. It's not, you know, resources are going more to the private.
Correct.
And which the poor cannot afford.
Correct.
So it's not a pro-poor agenda at all. Now, with that kind of neoliberal policies environment, there are new values and norms that have been developed over the past 20, 30 years, which are much more around the individual. And so that's why we're seeing less of this communal attitude. It's more about me. What do I gain? How do I get ahead? Very individualistic. And so you begin to shift the norms and care less about the community. So if this land, for example, is a communal land, so what? If I can grab it and put on my hotel, it's okay. You know? So policies have also created these shifts.
Yes.
And so there's a need for leadership to send a very strong signal to society. This is right at the level of state and government, but also coming down to social institutions, that's not okay. A society cannot just be about profit and greed and an individual. It also has to be about the collective, the communal, about everybody being protected. So that balance is what
is lacking.
Yes.
Now, for example, I want you to give us a scenario on how to go about it. Today, I'm here. Maybe if I go out there, then God forbid, I get abused. What are the steps and procedures I need to take to make sure that, you know what, at some point I put some effort to make sure that the perpetrator is brought to book? How do I go about it?
Okay, very quickly, it starts with knowledge.
Yes.
So this is an offense, you know, sexual harassment. So we have offenses that when you break down what the offense is about, it basically talks about sexual harassment. So under the penal code, you have a misdemeanor to insult the modesty of a female. We're still talking about female by word, sound, gesture, or so on, and intrude on their privacy, right? So it's an offense, which is punishable up to a year. So not having that. Now, if it happens, then it means an offense is a criminal issue. So you can report it to the police station. Now, there's a problem in some cases at the police station. You reported it and you've been laughed at. So what can you do? You can go to an organization that's working on these issues. They are usually women's organizations.
And we'll share that on social media.
Yes, we can provide that information. So go to the organization and they will go back with you to the police station.
And before I go to the organization, should I take a shower? Should I take a shower? Should I go as I am?
As you are, because the evidence has to be there that something has happened. Now, remember, with sexual harassment, often it's the word, it's a gesture, somebody put their hand on you. So they may not be that strong physical evidence, as you see with rape and
Abuse,
defilement,
yes.
with those cases.
Yes.
But maybe somebody saw it happening. Maybe at the workplace, this person who came to you and showed you a picture of a naked woman, you know, and said, I wonder how you would look, you know, if you're like that.
Yes.
Maybe they do this to other women as well.
Correct.
So you can also find out in that, are there others affected? Because when, if 3-4 of you are reporting this to the supervisor, then they're more likely to believe it. Not to say that you should wait until there are 3-4 of you. If it
Yes.
happens, you report.
You report.
You report. And if you're not given the support at the workplace or the support at the police, then look for an organization that can come in and cause the police or the workplace to do
move,
this.
yes,
To move.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
And when you go to the organization,
Yes.
nothing is being done, because
Yes.
many times is
That's
if you
also-
have money, then
Yes.
you have power, something
Yes.
will be done. If you
Yes.
don't have the money, then guys will be like, Psh,
Yeah.
after all, many are defiled. Who are you? How
Yeah.
special are you?
Yeah, that is often now when you're dealing with the NGOs that are providing, it's normally the legal aid service providers.
Correct.
That is not usually the case, because legal aid by definition is free. So at most, what one may be asked to pay is something like 2,000 or 5,000 to open the file,
Okay.
but not for the follow up of the case beyond your own transport to go to to the. But what happens often is that we get overwhelmed. The numbers are growing, not only on sexual offenses, but in general, of people cannot afford lawyers looking for legal aid. The numbers are really overwhelming.
Correct.
And so there is there is that. But we do try. I remember one incident that we had. It was not a sexual harassment. This was to do with a spouse, husband and a wife, and it went to the extent where the husband followed the wife to our offices. She was running away from violence, so she came to our office, and this man used his connections in security to trace her phone and to track that she had come to our office. So by chance, I had walked to the reception and I found this fracas going on.
Correct.
She had been kept away, but he was almost assaulting the legal officers and saying,
wow.
I want my wife, where's my wife? But we contained him and actually referred the matter to the police as well, because it was a beating, which is also a crime.
Correct.
So we go out of our way, but we sometimes find
You're
that...
overwhelmed.
Yes.
So it's a matter of us trying to see what can be done, but make sure if it happens, report it.
Yes.
And if it's abuse, then do not take a shower and take the precautions and the procedures that have been given by Irene Ovonji, the CEO of FIDA. We will be sure to share the areas and the avenues that you can go and report these cases to. I have Flavia on standby. Flavia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sexual harassment and abuse is a big thing.
I'm telling you, I think what has stood out for me and actually scared me is the fact that you can have your partner who's sexually abusing or assaulting someone, either in your home or outside, and you don't know how to have that conversation with them.
Right.
That is scary. We're using the hashtag Morning at NTV. We're talking more about this, and also sexuality, how we dress, who talk to us, and what about us who are in the arts industry? Sometimes you dress for your art, and that sometimes calls for sexual abuse outside of your workplace. That's all after the break.